Imagine starting your own building company, and this place is your workshop. It's time for some big changes. This old garage will be turned into a storage area and my very first workshop. But first, let me show you the storage area. I fixed the walls, added some electrical wiring, created new outlets, and turned chaos into peace. And next to that, I made a partial wall to create my workshop. And this workshop is built in a way that it serves also as my film studio. And in there, I built my own flattening table from the ground up. And I added new heavy machinery on mobile workbenches. So sit down and enjoy this transformation build. This is the current garage, where I make my YouTube videos. At this moment, it serves as a double function. It's been a workspace and a storage space at once. And most of the times, it's been a chaos because of me. But everything in here has a purpose. But you wouldn't say that by looking at it. Tools, boxes, bicycles, a trailer, all mixed together in one big mess. And every time I start a project, it feels like I spend more time looking for things than actually building. And next to that, when I start building, the air gets dusty, everything gets dirty, and nothing really works the way it should be. It's time to change that. It's time to turn this place into something way better. And that's why I decided to start the renovation by building 2 mobile workstations. They are made for my new saws I bought in my last video. The one where I built that epic table. These workstations will be the foundation for everything that comes next. Both workbenches are simple in design, just a square frame with strong wheels underneath. Nothing fancy, but solid. The real challenge wasn't building them, it was getting the height just right. I wanted the miter saw and table saw to be perfectly level, so that they could work together as one smooth setup. As usual, things didn't go right the first time. I thought I had measured everything carefully, but somehow bench number 2 came out way too tall. It's one of those moments that reminds me, building is always a mix of planning and fixing your mistakes. Well, at least that's how it works in most of my projects. But to fix my mistakes, I focused on finishing the first workbench. I added the wheels, mounted the miter saw, and finally measured the exact height it needed to be. With that done, I could go back to the workstation number 2, take apart the second bench and rebuild it properly this time. The final step for the second workstation was adding the wheels. And once everything was adjusted perfectly, I could finally see it, my first workstation, standing exactly at the height they needed to be. Next, I moved on to building the big workstation, workstation number 3, the flattening table. For this table, I picked the largest wooden boards I could find at my home local depot. I wanted this router table to be as big as possible, so in the future I would never have any troubles to make big wooden pieces flat. On top of that, this table offers a lot of storage space, and I will use it as a general workbench quite often. Once the top and the bottom of the router table were built, my mom kindly helped me to get the 2 parts together. After screwing them together, we flipped the table upside down to attach the wheels. Then I could turn the table back on its wheels and moved it into its final position. Next, it was time to build the router sled. I needed some specific parts for this. I ordered them from Fiverr.com. Unfortunately, this is also not a sponsor, but it's still a good company. At their website, I picked up 2 guide rails, the largest ones they had, and 8 blocks in total, 4 for the horizontal rails and 4 that slide along the vertical chrome tubes. I also got 4 connectors to join the guides together to make it one solid machine. Next, I built a frame out of plywood to mount the router on. I also connected the horizontal guide blocks with plywood. The goal is to let this construction slide like hot butter along the rails, and all of that with the router machine on top. Then it was time to connect everything. The stop blocks were installed, the horizontal and vertical tubes were joined together, and the router was securely mounted. And then it was time to test it. And sure enough, this setup was perfect. Perfect for finishing the table from my previous video, which is definitely worth checking out. After that, I decided to add some dust-proof components. A fun idea, but in practice, I ended up removing them almost immediately. The problem was that they prevented the router from sliding smoothly across the table that I was flattening in the previous video. Ideally, I would like to come up with a way to make the height also adjustable in the setup, but that's something for the future, maybe. But for now, sit back and enjoy these action shots of me testing the flattening table setup for the very first time. I was so happy that finally something worked immediately, like I had visioned. No setbacks this time. A few weeks later, I had finished the table project I have been working on. But there was still one big question left. What to do with the rest of the garage? This video didn't feel complete to me. And since this is actually my parents' garage, I sat down with them to talk about what they wanted. In the end, we decided to divide the space into two parts, creating a closed-off workshop so that dust wouldn't spread all over the place anymore. As you can see, I started by removing the thousands of screws from the wall. Then I filled in all the holes with wall filler and started to cover the edge of the ceiling with the tape to make sure everything would be ready for a clean paint job later on. Next, I thought it would be a good idea to sand the wall, but it turned out it didn't really make any difference. Nothing seemed to change. So I decided to move straight to the next step, primering the entire wall. After priming, I could finally start painting. I worked on one wall at a time. The reason for that was simple. I didn't want to move all my stuff outside every time and then bring it back at night. Is it the most efficient way to work? Not really, but for now it seemed like the best option. In the end, I painted each wall 3 or 2 times before the coverage was finally good enough. The idea behind the walls is that they will brighten up the space, making it easier to film my future projects and bring them to life the way I imagine them. And next to that, it gives the place already a much cleaner look. After finishing the first wall, it was time to move on the second wall. I followed the same process again. First removing all the things laying around, then removing all the screws in the wall, then filling the holes, and finally priming and painting. Some of the thicker screws just wouldn't come out, so I decided to grind them down until they were flush with the wall, and then I could cover them with wall filler. In the end, they would be completely disappeared. Back in the day, my dad used to keep birds in here. That explains the thousands of holes in the wall, and also the ugly patch of cement. There used to be a small hatch here that the birds could fly through to go outside, but I really didn't like how rough it looked, so I decided to redo this section completely. I started refilling the big gap, and since it already had some cement mortar mixed up, I decided to fill a few other holes as well. Looking back, I do not think I did a better job than my dad did back in the day. This task turned out to be more trickier than I expected. Sanding some excessive wall filler off, it was time to prime again. After priming the wall, I could start painting again. Then the old sink, which hadn't worked for ages, was finally taken out. Meanwhile, the plaster had dried, and that could finally be fixed as well. Step by step, everything was starting to come together. For the sink drain, I decided to cut the pipe short. Then, using PVC glue, I sealed the ends, making sure nothing could ever leak or move again. Then, the storage closet had to be resized. I cut off the top metal pipes with an angle grinder. And to be honest, I'm not exactly a hero when it comes to working with that many sparks flying around. But in the end, I managed to fix that as well. Finally, the second wall was completed. And now it started to organize the space again so I could start on the third wall and the final wall. I started the third and final wall the same way as before. Step 1. Removing the old wall plugs. Step 2. Filling the wall gaps. Step 3. Removing big bolts with my screwdriver or angle grinder. Step 4. Break out the ugly cement layer. Step 5. Refill the big hole I made and try to do it better than it was. Step 6. Sand down any excess wall filler, prime the wall again and paint it again. With the outer walls finally done, it was time to start installing a partition wall. My dad had a few days off and was excited to help me out, even though the heat in the Netherlands was almost unbearable. Still, we pushed on, hammering and measuring, side by side, just walking at our own pace, calm and chill. We built the wall using metal studs. I had made a wall from wooden beams before, but sometimes those beams aren't perfectly straight, and that can really affect the final result. These metal studs, they are a dream to work with. Always straight, always precise. Using tin snips, we cut them to sides, ready to mount the drywall. We decided not to add any insulation. This wall doesn't need to insulate. It just has to stop dust from moving between rooms. That's its main job, and nothing more. Here is how we tackled this wall. First, we built the frame. Then we installed the first drywall panel. Only after the first drywall panel was placed, we added in the next section of studs. This way, we could be sure that every panel would fit perfectly. The intermediate studs were only snapped into place when the drywall reached them, giving us just enough flexibility to make small adjustments along the way. After a few hours of work, the wall began to take shape, but the last panel was a bit trickier. It needed to be trimmed on the long side of the panel, and there needed to be an opening for the electrical wires. But after some careful cutting and sanding, it finally fit perfectly into place. Once all the drywall panels were in place, it was time to make sure everything was extra secure. I did this by adding a few extra screws, reinforcing the wall and keeping it solid. With the wall standing, it was time to finish it off. We placed mesh tape between the seams and covered them with plaster. Once the filler had set, it was time to sand the surface smooth and start painting. 3 coats were all it took to get a clean, even finish. The next step was installing new electrical wiring. My sister, who definitely doesn't work in construction but is incredibly handy, came out to help us. I can still learn a lot from her. The way she figured things out, down to the smallest detail. That's something I really admire. I'm more of the type who just starts and ends up fixing things 10 times along the way. But hey, maybe one day I will change. Anyway, back to work. Together with my sister and my dad, we started installing the new wiring. The ceiling light had to be removed and we wanted a new switch near the entrance of the garage. We also added 2 power outlets, just in case my parents ever get electric bikes. At least now they have the perfect spot to charge them. On video it probably looks like everything went perfectly smooth, but mounting that outlet actually took a few hours. Still, after a full day of electrical work, this was the results. On my next day off, I could finally work again on this garage project. First things first, clearing out the space again. Once the garage was empty, the damaged parts of the floor became even more visible. It was time to fix that. I started by applying primer to the holes, so the cement would stick better later on. Since the cement hadn't arrived yet, I decided to get started with the baseboards instead. But as soon as the delivery came in, I got right back to it, filling the gaps in the floor one by one. The key to getting a somewhat decent finished look was to smooth the concrete with a sponge. That gave everything the same texture and look. For a perfect result, I would have to remove the entire floor and have to redone it. But as you know, it's just a garage. After sanding down a few rough spots and letting the concrete fully dry of course, it was finally time to move everything back inside. The final task was installing a hanging system. Now my dad can hang up all his garden tools, still covered in soil after a day of work, neatly organized against the freshly painted white wall. And this was the final result for the storage side of this garage build. The workshop build followed pretty much the same process as the storage side. First I had to finish the wall. I filled in the gaps, sanded down and painted. Then I have to fill the gaps with primer on the floor and finally patch them up with concrete once again. After sanding the floor, I decided to tidy up the ceiling a bit. I still had some wood lying around and the gap behind the last beam really bothered me. You could still see the old bricks peeking through. Once the gap was covered, I moved on to installing the baseboards. The final step in this workshop build was adding a light. This time I didn't need to move any electricity. I could simply hang it where the old lamp used to hang. With this new lamp, I'm hoping for some beautiful lighting, perfect for filming future projects in this space. And after all that work, it was time to clean everything up one last time. And now it's finally time to see the end result. I hope you like this transformation. And if you want to follow along and see what I'm building next, then don't forget to subscribe, because I'm only just getting started. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this transformation build and I see you in the next one.